FM HD2 and Bloomberg Television.
Join us virtually for Bloomberg Prognosis, Advancing Health Equity in Dermatology on November 29th. We will bring together health industry experts to learn about the challenges patients of color face in medical dermatology and what we can do about them. This event is proudly sponsored by Pfizer. Register at BloombergLive.com/prognosis/radio. That's BloombergLive.com/prognosis/radio.
As in all human conflict, adults fight and children suffer. Today, 7.5 million children in Ukraine need to find water and shelter. They need safety in school. They need a place to sleep and comfort in the dark. Show them the world cares. Support UNICEF. On the ground in Ukraine, we won't stop until every child is safe. UNICEFUSA.org/Ukraine crisis.
I'm Tiffany Haddish. And I'm Marlon Wayne. African Americans are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer than any other racial or ethnic group. When you or someone you love is facing a pancreatic cancer diagnosis, access to cutting-edge treatment can help make long-term survival possible and improve future patient outcomes. That's why Stand Up to Cancer and the Lust Garden Foundation have teamed up to bring over 30 pancreatic cancer clinical trials to those who need them. Learning all you can about pancreatic cancer, including treatment options and what clinical trials are available, can give you or a loved one even more than hope. It can help make long-term survival possible. For more information about the latest pancreatic cancer research and clinical trials near you, visit pancreaticcancercollective.org.
You see the value in worldwide market news.
Stocks in Asia saw some heavy selling overnight.
And you want it first.
Several Fed officials beat the drum for higher interest rates.
So do we.
Crypto is in focus today.
We're coming off another day of declines on Wall Street.
Bloomberg Daybreak with Karen Moscow and Nathan Anker.
Straight ahead, your latest local headlines, plus a check of sports.
Weekday mornings at 5 on Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. There have been widespread layoffs in tech and other sectors, and many workplace experts say there are right ways and wrong ways to hand out pink slips. Bloomberg reporter Joe Constant says mass firings must be approached with caution.
I think communication is key, and with the messaging around how you do things is really important. I think, again, like wherever possible, if you can have one-on-one communication, train your frontline managers, that's really important. And it's really important to give people a chance to ask questions.
And Constance adds that it is important to treat departing employees humanely.
And this is a really difficult time for people, and it just communicates that you value your staff members and your employees, and it also sends a really important signal to the people who are left at the company and people who may join in the future.
Plus, companies should avoid terminating workers via email and be accountable, empathetic, and provide closure, along with a generous severance package. Ann Cates, Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Law with June Brasso from Bloomberg Radio.
It's been more than 40 years since the Supreme Court first considered affirmative action, and now its new conservative majority is signaling it's ready to eliminate the consideration of race in college admissions. In oral arguments on challenges to affirmative action programs at the University of North Carolina and Harvard College, several conservative justices suggested it had run its course, referring to the 2003 Grutter decision in which Justice Sandra Day O'Connor anticipated the use of racial preferences would no longer be necessary in 25 years. Here are Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett.
You don't think that University of North Carolina has to stop in 25 years, and at the 2028 mark. So what are you saying when you're up here in 2040? Are you still defending it? Like this is just indefinite, it's going to keep going on?
I don't see how you can say that the program will ever end. Your position is that race matters because it's necessary for diversity, which is necessary for the sort of education you want. it's not going to stop mattering at some particular point.
My guest is former United States Solicitor General Gregory Garr, a partner at Latham & Watkins. He won the landmark case of Fisher versus the University of Texas, which upheld the race-conscious admissions program used by that university. Greg, looking at the legal analysis after the arguments, it seems that the almost universal conclusion was that the court is ready to throw out the consideration of race in college admissions. Did you come to that conclusion as well?
I did. I mean, I think certainly based on the oral arguments, it appeared as though the challengers had the upper hand, and that's not surprising going in. But having said that, there's a lot that remains to be seen about how the court gets that result and how broadly it might go in these cases.
During the arguments, there seemed to be a great focus on whether educational diversity can be achieved without the consideration of race specifically, with race-neutral approaches. Does that indicate that justices are on to the next step?
I think that it means that they're focused very carefully on the application of strict scrutiny in this context, in particular looking for narrow tailoring and the existence of race-neutral alternatives. For some conservative justices, it may also mean simply illustrating that universities can achieve educational diversity in other ways without explicitly considering race as part of the admissions process. So I think different justices were looking at that issue through different lenses.
It seemed like the justices were deeply divided right down ideological lines.
Well, generally speaking, there's a stark divide in the court in terms of how the justices look at this question of diversity and the interest in achieving diversity on college campuses and otherwise. And I think you saw that by the questioning that the justices had for the advocates. The more liberal justices obviously came at this issue from the perspective of there being a compelling interest in achieving diversity on college campuses and elsewhere, and whether or not they were able to persuade their more conservative colleagues, I'm not sure, but certainly that was one of the more interesting interplays going on throughout the oral arguments and reflects the sort of stark divide that the justices have on this issue.
You argued the Fisher case, of course, and the three justices who dissented, the Chief Justice and Justices Thomas and Alito, are still on the court. Were they as stark in their questions and comments about using race to achieve diversity?
Yes. I think, from the standpoint of the more conservative justices, their position on this issue has been clear for some time, and I think that's true of Justice Thomas, although, as I recall, he did not ask questions during the Fisher argument, but certainly Justice Alito, and even the Chief Justice, who is more moderate in a number of areas, but in this area has been very outspoken against the consideration of race in admissions.
There was a lot of discussion about students using their admission essays to talk about their experiences, for example, overcoming racism. Did the lawyer representing the challengers, Students for Fair Admissions, seem to come around to accepting that?
Towards the second argument, I think they seem to be willing to acknowledge that it might be appropriate in the context of an essay, at least depending on how it was used in describing the person's experiences and what he or she might bring to a college campus. But I do think that that was one of the more interesting and important exchanges throughout the oral argument. Certainly that's something that the Chief Justice seemed to be interested in nailing down, that the school might be able to consider an applicant's race in the context of a personal essay.
Might that be sort of a middle ground for a decision here?
It certainly could be a middle ground, and it could leave schools with an important tool for attempting to achieve educational diversity in the makeup of their student bodies, even if the court deems the consideration of a check-the-box use of race unconstitutional.
Another area of questioning was, when will affirmative action run its course? And some of the conservatives really pressed on that point. The Chief Justice asked the Solicitor General, Grutter gave us a number. Do you want to give a number?
Right.
No number was given.
No number. I think that was one of the more difficult parts